many scientists don't think we're going to make it through this century. Now, if you go back 50 years, if you go back to the beginning of the 70s, at that point, the idea was that humankind will go on for millennia. And I got this wonderful quote, if I can just share it with you. So this is Franklin Branly. I'm not sure if he's still here. I think he is. The astronomer emeritus for the Natural History Museum, who said, someday the world will end. And he wrote a book called The End of the World. And then he says, this is a gloomy forecast, but one about which we should not despair. There are consoling factors. The end of the world will not occur in your lifetime, or that of your children's or your children's. We can be quite sure that doomsday will be millions of years in the future. Well, that's 40 years ago. And our whole conception of longevity of humankind has changed in this time. So this whole idea of time being this linear thing, and that we've got forever, and it's still there, So we know that this is not going to be the case, but we're not doing anything about it. And I'm caught in that gap, thinking, and this is really ridiculous because, here I am in my little apartment, doing my work, thinking about what can we do in this gap, because we have to make some changes if we want our kids to survive. It's that simple. And so we've got researchers who are studying existential risk. Existential risk being, it's I think a common term at this point, being for the end of humankind, when the species is no more. And then there are a whole pile of existential risks. So we've got time changing. For 10,000 years, the Holocene, we jogged away. You can see this. This is my graph. So here we go, 10,000 years, we're just jogging along and everything is fine. And then we get to the Industrial Revolution, and it's not just that it's a small spike, it is a straight up spike. And so human activity is accelerating. So our idea of time, it being some kind of linear thing, it is far from linear, and we're speeding up all the time. And certainly Washington has absolutely reneged on their responsibility, to the point where I think I cannot even begin to say what I think of what's happening in Washington, because they've dropped the ball, and they are actually impacting the lives of every child on this planet by not taking seriously. It's not just climate change. It is all of the existential risks, when you combine them, that are going to have some kind of impact. We tend to think of these, it's not only that the UN is in silos, so countries are in silos, it's that ideas are in silos. So we can argue about gun control, we can argue about climate, but in actual fact, these two things, we'll talk about armaments and war and climate, are absolutely linked. And so we can talk about the connectedness between all of the existential risks that we face. And one of the reasons climate is very much caught up with armed conflict is the damage that armed conflict does to the planet and to environments. So one of the largest polluters on the planet is war. And we spent something like, I don't know, it's 15% of global money on armed conflict. And so once you start looking, if you just started there, and I'm doing this on the spot, I haven't thought this piece through, but the idea of connectedness, systemic complexity. So if there is an armed conflict, then people are migrating. And so then you have migration and you end up with social unrest. And so the people have to go somewhere, and then everyone argues about where those people are going to go. And nobody actually wants them, which is, there are more people on the planet that are migrating or homeless or displaced now, anytime since the Second World War. And we're doing nothing about it. Yet, it is a problem that will affect every one of our children, because it affects the ecology of the planet, the climate of the planet. So all of these are interconnected.